there. Welcome to Streets and Eats. This is episode 98, and we're talking about bucket list, picking German grapes. So much fun.
Bucket list, check for that one.
Bucket list achieved.
Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries in all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure. We had the opportunity recently to get out in the fields and pick German grapes. It's something I know you've always wanted to do. You've had it on your bucket list for a while, although we don't really have like a physical bucket list, do you? I don't.
I have many lists.
Well, you're the list queen.
But I don't necessarily have one that's called bucket list. What I do is I'm a collector. And as I collect, I list things. And I don't collect physical things too much anymore. There's a few things you might notice as you watch our videos. But overall, I just collect memories and photos and things that I want to do. So that's what my lists entail. They're things I want to do. Are they things I must do? No. Are they things that I want to do necessarily? Well, of course, before I die, but I mean, that's what a bucket list is. But to me, a bucket list is, kind of like a check sheet. I've got to go down. I've got to hit this bucket list. For me, it's more like when I go to Argentina, I want to eat lots of meat because that's what you do. Lots of beef and
go to a ranch and have a big
that's
beef
right.
barbecue.
When I go to Antarctica, that's on my quote unquote list, but is it on I don't have anything titled bucket list.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a question we have for our audience. What do you think a bucket list is? Is it an outdated term?
Right.
Should we update the term? What should we do? What is your list? How do you determine where you want to go?
Places I want to go, things I want to do.
Well, that's what I call it, but that's kind of boring, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess we've done so much that the whole idea of a bucket list, the things you want to do before you kick the bucket. I mean, those biggies, we've done most of those biggies. So maybe for us, we don't really need a bucket list anymore. But now it's like, wait a minute, there's still so much out there, so much to do. And every time we go anywhere and we meet anybody or any fellow traveler, we always learn something new. And
today's, when we started traveling, we've been married a long time and we've been traveling together a very, very long time. And so we started prior to the majority of the internet. So we basically had to use only books or word of mouth. And nowadays there's so much information out there that you can't possibly do it all. And some of the things that become popular aren't things that were popular, say 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
But on top of that, maybe they're almost too popular now. And I kind of want to avoid them because there's too many people. So it's always a puzzle, an enigma. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? We're going to do a whole podcast on that, I think.
Oh, that's a good idea. I think we should.
Yeah. At any rate, we're not talking about bucket lists or podcasts right now. We're talking about German wine grapes and how to pick them. So I think you have the trivia question this week.
Yeah, I get the trivia question this week. And since we're talking about picking German wine grapes, we're going to talk about a specific German wine grape. Of course, I think everybody knows the most popular German grape is the
Riesling.
Riesling, ding, ding, ding. That's right. That's not the question, however.
Well, no, because it was way too easy. I mean, it's easy for me because I've lived in Germany a heck of a lot of years.
The Riesling grape has been around for a heck of a lot of years, too. Far more than you.
Far more than me, I hope.
In fact, I think the first recorded planting of Riesling grapes in Germany, of course, is in 1400. And it's been going strong ever since. It's grown all over the world now. For a while, it kind of sank in popularity. Riesling and German wines in general lost their popularity after World War I and World War II.
Go figure. I think Germany was a little out of fashion then, with perhaps some good reason.
And it took most of the 20th century to start regaining that popularity. And it's done a pretty good job now. It's becoming much more popular. You probably remember Blue Nun. White wine, German wine?
I vaguely remember. I was never much of a wine drinker until a little, maybe later than most people. As a young person, I much preferred, and maybe still do to a certain degree, German beer.
Yeah.
But saying that, I do love German wine too. So I came to a little bit later in life is all I'm saying.
And we had the luxury of living in Germany near a major wine growing region in the 80s and into the early 90s. And so, I mean, getting German wine was not difficult for us. You could pick it up at any store or go for a little ride and stop at a vintner and have a tasting. But after we moved back to the States, finding good German wine, because by then we'd developed the taste for it.
That's true.
Was a little more challenging. And Blue Nun was one of the ones that we would pick because it was the closest we could get, though way too sweet.
That's true. You're right.
And I think that's why it kind of started losing its popularity. Although for a while it was the number one selling wine in the world, surprisingly.
That's pretty cool. Is there a trivia question?
There's a trivia question. I was going to ask you, because it is such a popular, since Riesling is such a popular wine, the grapes are grown around the world, of course, in most major wine growing countries. But there's one that is not grown in, and you can probably imagine it would be Spain because of all the sun and the heat and the aridness. It's just not a great wine growing region.
Yeah. If you know anything about Germany, where Riesling is the most popular, it is a wet, green climate. And it's a beautiful climate. I love this climate. We used to say when we lived at Bitburg, if you don't do it in the rain, you don't do it. So forget it altogether. But so basically you can do anything in the rain because it rains a lot in Germany, but it makes it so green and pretty that it's well worth it in my experience. And I've been to Spain many, many times. And guess what? Green is not a word that I associate with Spain. So I get it.
Yeah. Definitely. And when you think about other places it's grown around the world, it's really big in Washington State, which is very similar to Germany, Ontario, Canada, New York, all very similar. But Spain, it just wouldn't work. So Spain does not grow any Riesling grapes. South Africa does, France does, of course, the United States, Australia, all those major wine growing countries.
This is a big lead-in to your trivia question.
Yeah. I wanted to go with that question, but I was like, no, she'll get that. It's too easy. So, and maybe this one's even easier for you. I don't know, because you're pretty well versed on German white wines. But here you go. We'll give it a try. So if you look at a bottle of German Riesling, you're going to see words on it that kind of indicate its level of sweetness, right?
Its level of sweetness. Okay.
Yeah, or the level of sugar. It maybe doesn't actually indicate how sweet it's going to taste. Instead, it's more taken from the amount of sugar in the grape when it was pressed.
Okay. I have an inkling where this is going.
So there are
too many.
There are 6 specific levels of sweetness, if you will, for lack of a better term. Can you name them all? Can you put them in the right order?
I can name 4. I'm going to let me try.
And put them in the right order as you're doing.
I'm going to try.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Spätlese.
Okay, that's definitely one of them.
It's not the first one?
But it's not the first.
So it's not the first one. Okay, well, I don't know. Spätlese, Auslese, Beerenauslese, Eiswein. Those are all the ones I know. So that's 4. I think you could probably stick in... maybe I don't know. No, I Qualitätswein, I don't know.
No, you did quite well, actually. But you forgot Cabernet.
Cabernet. I actually was thinking Cabernet, and then I thought, should I say that? You know how it goes with those test questions.
And Cabernet goes before Spätlese.
Okay, actually, that's what I was going to do. Should be Cabernet, but I didn't go there. Okay.
Actually, you did pretty good. You missed Cabernet, but Cabernet, Spätlese, Auslese, Beerenauslese, and Eiswein. And then after that is Trocken Beerenauslese.
Okay, and that's funny because I was going to say something about Trocken, and I'm like, yeah, but that Trocken means dry. So then we're getting into the dries. But I get it. Okay, so I feel like I did okay with that
really
question. Because here's why. I love sweet wines, and I started out loving sweet wines. So I drank a lot of Spätlese. Not as much Auslese because it is that much sweeter. But I'll tell you what, in ice wine, there is nothing better than an after dinner especially in the winter. I don't know why the winter makes a difference, but it does to me. And it's so sweet and it's so desserty. It just goes down so well.
It's served nice and chilled.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. We don't drink it that much though. I mean, I've drank mostly Spätlese, I would say. And then nowadays I'm moving into the Haupttrockens and a little bit drier. Interesting question.
Good question.
All right. So now we're going to jump right into the main portion of our episode, which we did not record at the same time. So there might be a little overlap and we're going to say sorry for that. But like I said, we're trying something new. Guten Tag. Today we're talking about Germany and things that we have done to meet our bucket list expectations.
Right. Everybody's got a bucket list, of course. I mean, it might be climbing to Machu Picchu on the Sunrise Trail or whatever it is.
Or, in my case, in this particular case, my bucket list has always been picking the grapes and then sort of learning the process of doing the grapes as I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been on wine tasting tour after wine tasting tour after wine tasting tour, and they take you through the grape fields and they tell you about the different grapes that are in the wines and they tell you everything about the wines that they grow and how they process them, maybe how long they're bottled and how long it takes to ferment and all that kind of stuff. But basically you're just walking through fields.
Right.
And then you're drinking.
And they might
drinking, which by the way is fun. But
and they might take you into the cellars and show you the process of the grapes like the juice in these big vats.
And they might give you a taste of that.
Yeah,
it's fun. I mean, I could do that. And have done it many times.
Like the ideal would be Lucille Ball stomping the grapes with your bare feet.
Grapes, my little peasant dress.
But I think in this day and age, that's not really going to happen.
Well, I think and in all fairness, I don't really want to drink any grapes after someone's bare feet, but either.
Have you seen my toes?
Right.
No, thanks.
But in saying that, I did want to pick grapes. Yes. I've always wanted to pick grapes.
Well, we've been living in Germany for a long time, and we've been living around vineyards pretty much, anywhere in Germany. You're probably going to be living around vineyards.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I guess that's something that, unless you're really into white wines and Rieslings and that kind of thing, you may not know that Germany has a really strong, huge wine growing region. They have the Rhine, the Mosel, they have the Franconian wines, they have tons of them, but they're really mostly white wines. There are a few. In fact, this vineyard that we went to is also known for their red wines.
That's true.
But
we'll get to that.
I think Germany's more interested in white wines.
But we would drive around and there's stunning little road trips that you can take up and down the rivers, through the vineyards, past castles, ships on the river, barges. You can take river cruises.
You can do the wine.
You're going to see vineyards and people, depending on what time of year it is, working in the vineyards.
Yeah, you're going to be able to do wine any way you want to do it. But it is a little bit harder to find someone to go picking the grapes. But anyway, that was on my bucket list.
Yeah.
And so here we are. We're moving to Germany once again. And we're staying with my sister and my brother-in-law, Ernestine and Chris. And Chris starts saying, hey, he's talking to not me. And he says he's going on this wine tour. I'm like...
He's talking to someone on the phone.
My little ears perk up. I'm like, what was that?
Wine tour?
Wine tour? What kind of wine tour? He goes, we're going to go pick grapes, and then we're going to go press the grapes, and then we end up with a bottle of wine, blah, blah, blah. I was like, can I come? I mean, I'm not shy. Something I really want to do. That was on my list. He says, no, the trip is full. Sorry. I was a little bit downtrodden, but that's life. That's the way it goes.
So we told him, if it happens again, please keep us on the list.
And he remembered. So they ended up having, as often happens, a couple people canceling. And he's like, we got 2 slots. Do you want to go? Yes.
So we go out to this little place on the Rhine. And luckily, Chris drove because that's critical near the end.
Yeah, you need a driver.
I mean, ideally, everybody would take a bus or a train. And a lot of times...
we could have taken the train.
And a lot of times when you take that kind of tour, that's what you're going to do. They'll pick you up. So that's a good way to do it. But we were out on the Rhine River and in this little town, Ingolstadt.
Ingelheim.
And then this little town, Ingelheim, which I didn't know until we got there, is also, as you mentioned, one of the red wine regions of Germany. And I mean, I was kind of blown away because I've never thought of red wine in Germany, except for maybe like, Glühwein and that sort of thing.
Which we do love our Glühwein and Feuerzangenbowls, that's for sure.
And I've had a couple of red wines in Germany, but really it's more about the white wine. So that was a little bit shocking, but it is. And they're marketing it, and they're very proud of their red wines. And
I think they're doing well, yeah.
I would say we're pretty darn good. But on this trip, we were, of course, picking Rieslings.
We were actually scheduled, I think, to pick red wine
like
because it is known for red wine. But they had already gone past. Like we were doing this in mid-September, and they had already picked most of the red wine grapes
because there was a lot of early rain,
frost, and rain, yeah. Weather is everything when you're a farmer or vintner.
So off we go. We get to Ingelheim, and we tromp into the Singer-Fischer family winery. And it is. I mean, it's a little family winery, and it is operated by Dad.
Klaus.
He's the owner.
Who is about our age. Maybe a few years older than us.
You can tell he's kind of like...
But he's like...
getting the next generation ready.
Yeah, I'm kind of on my way out. I'm ready to hand it over to the kids. And really, he was there the whole day. And his wife actually fed us lunch in the vineyard, so she was also there. But it was mainly run by Lena and
the younger
Jan,
generation,
which were his kids.
Pretty much in full swing operating the winery, I think. And yeah, I really got that sense too that he's not retired, but he has definitely stepped back and they've taken the reins.
And he should.
And
coming from someone like us, hey, we're all for it.
We're ready for that.
Early retirement, go for it.
Yeah. And so, well, the farm has been there for a while. I think he inherited from his parents, but it wasn't really a big winery at the time. They didn't really do a lot of wine. They did just like small batches for themselves type thing. A lot of apples and that sort of stuff. But when he took it over, he's like, no, wine is it. And not just wine, but sparkling wine. He was all about sparkling wine.
Oh, I don't remember that, but you're probably right. I just remember the red wines, and I mean, I love white German wine anyway, so I was all about the Rieslings.
Yeah. Well, we got to talking about it. He said, I just love the sparkling wine. It's what I really love to make. It's what I like to drink.
Well, and right across the border in Alsace is Cremant, the sparkling wine region of France. And so it kind of makes sense because they have a very similar, in fact, the Mosel goes right through both of them. And they have a very serious,
varieties and everything.
Exactly. So it kind of makes sense to me what he was doing.
Yeah. So, but he said, but there's not that big of a market for it. So we had to. We can't just do sparkling wine, even though that's my passion.
Because we are Deutsch.
Yeah.
So anyway, we get to the little thing, the little main area where they live, where they have some of their equipment, where they have a shop, and they get us all together and they kind of tell us how the day is going to go. And they basically just immediately loaded us up into a couple of tractor trailers that they have specifically for leading wine tours, because that's what Lena does as part of her everyday job, is she leads all different kinds of wine tours. So this is something that anybody who comes to Germany could probably set up if you're willing to. If it's a small group, I think you're going to end up paying
a little bit more.
Quite a bit for it. But if you have a large group, like we had organized a large group, or we didn't organize it, whoever organized it, we were included.
We glommed
onto it. We end up getting to do it for 50 euros is all we end up paying. And that actually comes with a bottle of wine at the end as it is. Plus we had lunch. So it was, and it's an all-day tour. So it was well worth it. I thought 50 euros was
and wine
great.
Tasting, of course.
And wine tasting, yeah. I thought it was a great price, but it was something someone had set up purposely to do everything that we did. And I think that if you live here, that is something to keep in mind, because if you have relatives coming, or if you're just in a club, like this was a club.
Group of friends.
Or a group of friends, or the people you work with, or what have you. It's such a good way to get out and do some things that you wouldn't normally get to do. So I guess my point is, if you think of something you want to do and you have enough people for a group, in this case we had 30 people, so 30 times 50, they're making a pretty good.
They're happy to do it.
They were very happy to do it. And so it makes it worth their while. Plus, of course, we bought tons of wine while we were there. We bought a case. Chris bought a couple of cases, and that's just us. There was 28 other people that bought plenty of wine as well. So we made it worth their while, and I think that that's really a key thing to keep in mind. But I've set up private tours all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that don't let that, especially if you live somewhere, don't let that dissuade you. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And the other thing is, you can look on the website of Singer Fisher, and they do throughout the year have events, not necessarily always grape picking, but out into the fields and lunch in the fields. They do that pretty regularly.
And they're not the only ones.
And they're not the only.
Yeah, there are plenty that do that kind of
stuff. On the
stuff.
Rhine River, for sure.
Yeah, but I think the picking of the grapes that's
a challenge.
Was the hardest thing to. I've never seen it before.
No.
We've lived in Germany a total altogether of 16 years or something?
Yeah.
A lot of years.
A lot of years.
And we never had the chance to go picking before. Of course, I didn't make the chance, like I'm telling you to do. But
yeah.
That is the harder part, was the actual picking of the grapes.
Yeah, and we have heard of other instances where groups were able to go in and help harvest grapes, but it was always very, like they knew someone who knew somebody.
Yeah.
So I think that it's probably something that might be on the rise, because that experiential tourism
exactly, I agree
is really gaining momentum. So I think you'll see more and more of that becoming available.
And I have to say, for someone who has been literally touring the world my entire life, the things I remember most are when I'm in there doing something, when I'm part of the experience as opposed to just watching it. It's like the difference between going to a theater and watching a movie or being on set and being in a play. I mean, which one are you going to remember better? You're going to remember the lines of the one that you were in. You're going to remember, the funny things that happen so much easier, especially since you did it 6 times. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
So out we go to the fields, and we get out there, and we unload from the tractors. We're all standing around in most of us were sensibly wearing boots.
I think all of us were.
And long pants and long sleeve shirts. I don't know if everybody was.
Anyway.
Most of us were. And right away, Lena gets us all together in a group, and she gives us the little spiel about what we're looking for, what we'll be doing. So we had
and how to cut the grapes.
So we had a really good idea of what to expect and what we'd be doing.
When she said, so there's 30 of us, and when she said we were going to do 4 rows, I'm like, piece of cake. We're going to get through this in no time.
And then you look down the row.
The rows are long, very long.
Very long rows.
And it actually took us to do 4 rows, I think, right around maybe 50 minutes, an hour?
Somewhere right around an hour.
And that was probably enough for me. By the end of it, you're bending over, you're standing up. I mean, it wasn't hard work, but, you start to feel it.
Yeah. I agree.
Anyway, so she showed us how to pick the grapes, and basically, they handed us our gloves, they handed us our little clippers, and they sent us along our way. They did pass out the buckets, and that was one of the fun things, and I don't know if we have that on tape anywhere, but one of the fun things was about every, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it was, they would yell, "Buckets!" And so you would take your bucket and you would hand it to someone, and they would hand it to someone, they would dump it in the big bin, and then you'd get an empty bucket and you'd fill that one up again. And it was just kind of fun, because it was kind of like, knowing that, I filled up a bucket. That's my 3rd bucket. That's my 4th bucket. It kind of gave you this feeling of accomplishment.
And we weren't kind of counting our buckets at first, but that quickly dropped on the wayside, because after the 4th or 5th bucket, and you're not even halfway down the row, you know that there's no point in counting buckets. You're going to be getting a lot of them.
Yeah, anyway, it was fun. And plus, they didn't always fill up before you dumped them. That's when I stopped counting mine. I'm like, but I just have this much in there. But you might as well dump it because you don't know when they're going to dump it again.
Yeah, and I thought picking the grapes would be a lot harder. Like we'd be like grabbing them and pulling them off the vine and stuff. But we had little shears, and you just grab it and snip it. And they told us, don't worry about anything really. If you have to cut some stuff away to get to the grapes, cut the stuff away. Pull it off, whatever. Just when you get the grapes, make sure you're keeping the grapes clean and don't put any of the leaves or any of that stuff in the bucket with the grapes.
I think the most hazardous thing is I was starting to get a little bit of a blister from using the shears. But you had gloves, so if you were doing what you were supposed to do, it wouldn't have been a problem. But I really think the most hazardous thing, and what got a couple of people we're out in nature. So what hangs around, grapevines? Well, let me tell you, spiders do. And spiders don't bother me, and especially in Germany, I don't think there's any poisonous ones. If they are, they're not something to worry about. But there was a few people that are like, there's a spider on me. I'm like,
it's true.
Just brush it off.
So we did that for about an hour. I don't know how many, did we get a final count on the big bins that we filled up? I think
we had like six. That's how many they offloaded at the end.
That sounds about right.
It was quite a bit. I don't know, but you stand in one spot for about 10 or 15 minutes, and the vines are pretty full of grapes. So, you're going from top to bottom or bottom to top or over to the side, whatever. Anyway, you were picking quite a few grapes.
We got quite a few.
Got a good experience from it.
And by the time we got to the end of the row, we were definitely ready for lunch.
Yeah, we were. Which, I gotta say, well, you know me. I mean, I love food.
Me too.
I love being outside.
Me too.
And, I love wine. So, lunch was probably the highlight of my day. And I wouldn't say it was the most gourmet of lunches.
No, but it was
hearty.
And it was very welcome because by that time you worked up a pretty good appetite and a pretty good thirst. So we didn't really know what to expect, but once everybody got to the end of their row, they brought the tractors around to that side, and we all loaded back up in the tractors, and we went up
just a little bit
further up into the vineyards. We could have walked for sure. It wasn't that far. And we come around a corner, and here's this long German fest table, all spread out in between two rows of vines, and it's all laid out. It's got the wine on it. It's got the glasses, and three women about our age, maybe a little bit younger, set up with ladles and hot pots and everything. They're ready to go. So
Andrea actually does this a couple of times a year. And she told us why the whole tradition started. And that was, the harvesting season is very short, and they needed to maximize the time in the fields as possible. So they would bring the lunch to the workers because they didn't want them to basically take a long break.
Go off for a big break, take a nap.
And even to this day, even though much more is automated and they don't have as many workers and they have a lot more flexibility as far as timing goes, what they found out was, still people expect to be fed. It's kind of part of their job. So maybe they'll feed them at the house, or maybe they'll feed them in the vineyards, or they have tours for it too.
So we had this really rich goulash, like Hungarian style goulash, paprika, onion, flavorful, big chunks of really delicious tender pork. And we put that on with some salted boiled potatoes. And it doesn't sound like the best meal in the world, but it hit the spot.
It definitely hit the spot. And it came with a green salad. And then we also had dessert, which was something I had never heard of before. We did end up getting the recipe, so watch out for that. But anyway, it was a red wine cake. And it was typically German. It wasn't too sweet. It wasn't too mushy or spongy like American cakes are. It's more like a better crumb or whatever. And really good. We didn't have coffee with it. We were too busy drinking our wine. But it was good with the wine. Good with coffee, but it would have gone great with coffee as well. That's true.
And it didn't have any frosting or any filling or anything. No. And again, it was just delicious. And so here we are sitting at these long tables, beautiful skies. We're surrounded by grapes, and just what a great time. Good lunch.
It was a delicious lunch. And we had a really good time because, of course, you're with people that we didn't know them so well. But most people knew each other and we had good conversation, which is a very German thing. Oh, right. So if you go to a German festival, and if you've ever been to a German festival, you know that the tables fill up rather quickly.
And they're all long fest tables all in a row.
Which means that if you're just doing me going someplace, we're only going to take up a little space of the table, so there's plenty left to share with someone else. And it's a very German thing to do, is share the table. And I would say at least 75% of the time you strike up a conversation and you have a good time and you end up making new friends.
You're going to at least have a good time while you're there, and maybe even sometime in the future.
Exactly.
You never know. So we finished lunch. I suppose if we really wanted to, we could have gone and picked more grapes. There's plenty to pick.
We checked that off.
But that part of the tour was done. We loaded back in the tractors, back down to the winery in town, and we all unloaded. And they were setting up for the wine tasting. And so we got a little bit of talk about the different grapes they have in the wine. And then while we're doing that, of course, the tractors were going back to the field to get our grapes and bring them back down. And once the grapes arrived, then really it was like part 2 of the tour. And that was making the wine.
Well, part 3 after lunch.
Yeah, or part 4, part 5. By this point, we'd had some wine and...
We couldn't count. Anyway, so they backed up the grapes. When Jan backed them up, he dumped them one by one, each of the bins, into the press. And then he told us about the press and how the press works and about how long it stays in there. And the really cool part about that was you could see the grapes coming out in the juice. And it produced so much juice. I couldn't believe how much juice was in there.
Right away. Yeah. And it was going to keep going for another 4 or 5 hours or something like that.
So he showed us how to just dip our glass right in that juice and taste it. And it was
first drippings.
Delicious. It was just juice. There's nothing alcoholic about it.
At that point, it's just pure grape juice.
It was yummy.
And it was pretty good at that point. So you knew it was going to make some pretty good wine.
After that, we hosed everything down because it was
we did the whole process. I mean, this wasn't like you're going to pick a couple of grapes and then you're going to lunch and drink some wine, and then you're going to come back and you'll see a little bit about the process, and then you'll taste some more wine. No, I mean, they dumped the grapes out of the big plastic bins. They held them out upside down. We had to spray them out and get them clean. And if they weren't clean enough,
they made you
get back in there and do it some more. So
anyway, that was fun. It was still fun anyway.
Working.
And then we got to do the real wine tasting where they brought out the different bottles of wine and they told us what it was and how long they stay in storage and ferment and whatever. And then we just tasted the ones we liked, and we bought a lot of good wine.
Had the opportunity to buy.
And we left. And I think we got there about 9 o'clock in the morning.
I was thinking 9 o'clock too.
We left about 3:30.
Right.
And that included, like I said, we were at lunch a good hour at least. So it was a nice full day. It was a lot of fun. And like I said, for 50 euros, I thought it was well worth it. Well worth it. We would have spent, half that anyway on lunch if we'd gone anywhere else.
Lunch and the wine we bought, for sure.
Yeah.
So the wine we tasted. And when we say tasting, this was more like you could taste it, sure.
You could have
and you could spit it out if you wanted to. But really it was, this is all of our wines. Try them, drink them, decide which one you like the best. If you want to buy some, buy some. If you don't, that's okay too. There's no pressure to buy.
No,
we just liked the wine, and it was a good price.
Exactly. It was a lot of fun, and I was so happy to really be able to check that off my bucket list.
Would you do it again?
I would do it again, 100%.
I would do it again too.
The picking of the grapes, an hour was about enough for me. Mm-hmm. I was getting tired from that repetitive movement, and I definitely wouldn't want to do it as a job.
Right.
But it was just a fun day. Yeah, I could do it every year.
Do it again too.
Anyway, it was a lot of fun. All right, so that was the conclusion of our first episode where we've added video to our podcast, and I think we're going to try this. Jim and I had a little, I don't know what you want to call it, business discussion, argument. I don't know, however you want to say it, that we're stagnating and we want to try something new and we want to kind of kick up our podcast a notch, and everybody's doing video and we may not be the most attractive people on earth, but we don't care. We're going to do it too, because that's just the kind of people that we are. We're willing to jump in feet first and try new things. So we're adding video to our podcast.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it, and it's definitely something we're going to keep doing. And we'll see how it goes. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, sorry. If you got any constructive criticism, feel free to share that. If you absolutely hate it, then just go back to listening to the podcast. It's okay.
It's okay. They're still available.
We'll still have the podcast available on all the channels where you would normally find it. And we'll have the videos available if you are interested in checking that out on our YouTube channel at Reflections en Route. And we'll also put links to it on our blog, Reflections en Route or Roving Veils.
Anyway, hope you enjoyed it.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.